Welcome to the Recruitment Mentors podcast. My name is Hisham Azuz. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Ryan Cleland-Bogle, who is the founder of Tempting Ventures. Between 2002 to 2009, Ryan founded and co-founded 4 recruitment brands across different sectors and locations, which were finance, healthcare, and rhetoric, which all operated across London, New York, Hong Kong, and Ireland. By 2013, he had successfully exited all of these brands. And since then, Ryan's mission has been very focused on supporting, mentoring, and investing in successful recruitment entrepreneurs. He initially started this journey as the CEO of Recruitment Entrepreneur in 2014. But then after this, in 2017, Ryan launched Tempting Ventures, which now actively invests in early stage recruitment businesses in exciting sectors in the UK and US. They currently have 6 different recruitment brands within their portfolio, which they're looking to grow, which all operate in different sectors and locations. Ryan, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Good to be here.
So, as I always like to start this podcast is the £1 million question, but I'm going to change it slightly for you. So, in your opinion, what characteristics and traits do you think make up a highly successful recruitment entrepreneur? Let's start there.
Okay. I think in some ways it's pretty similar to what makes someone a really successful and sustainably successful recruiter. I think as a starting point, as a starting point, I think what gives you a better chance of being a successful recruiter or entrepreneur's market. So whether I think some people get there by luck, some people by good judgment. I think we've got there initially by luck and then perhaps later by good judgment once we probably understood how important it was. But fundamentally, if you're in a good market and you have a tailwind, the common threads that I've seen with sort of successful recruitment entrepreneurs is their ability to attract, train, and retain talent. And that's the rule, which probably will never change for you as the CEO of a business. So, if you can't, have a magnetic or attractive vision for people to join you, if you can't give them the training and personal development that, give them best chance of success, and you can't create a pathway to keep them in your business, you're probably going to shelf life. So, those things I think are the common threads that people do very well: get right market, attract, train, and retain repeatedly. And that repetition is probably the hardest challenge that recruitment founders have at the start, when you're bringing people into a business and maybe 2 of you, maybe 3 of you, 5 of you. It's an opportunity to come and sit with you, learn from you, bastardize what you're doing, get it to work from you, get lots of personal attention, whatever it may be. And all your language is in the future. So, we're going to do, it's all going to happen. And you can't really question any of that, as you grow, a lot more of your language is present. Some of it becomes past. It's great that you say you're going to do this, but you've been going 6 years and there's 3 of you, so
yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And so I guess like that journey of a CEO and how they attract, train, and retain people, how forward thinking entrepreneurs are around that, and how much they're able to put in repeatable processes matters. And it's a very, very different journey to go from 0 to 10 to 10 to 30 to 30 to 100 to 100 to 300. The processes that you need to have in place and what you need to value as an entrepreneur needs to change along the way. So if everything you do is driven by personality, I need to hear it, see it, feel it, touch it in order to understand how it's working, that will slow you down. At some point, you'll probably trip over. If everything you're doing is actually, how do we repeat this to give people a platform which is worth more to them than my competitors, then you've probably got quite a good chance of success. So, that can be L&D, that can be, the marketing and being able to demonstrate, X amount of our revenue came from marketing, which you don't personally need to do next year. It can be X amount of our revenue came from data we already have in our CRM and own, which you don't need to personally do. It's already there. So, we have something which is of value to people joining the business. And your aim should be to continually build that value to make it a more attractive proposition for people to join you. And that part of that's obviously development pathways and giving people opportunity. But the entrepreneurs that are really focused on that, I think, tend to do pretty well if they're in a good market. And, it's a pretty common thread between each business. You get your operating model right. Is it scalable? Is it buildable? I think a lot of people struggle with that because it's quite a different role, and you need to constantly be evolving what you prioritize, what your focus is along the way. And I think quite often culturally, CEOs find it quite hard to get out of that liked mode into respected mode. The two different people, and but the people that do that well tend to be the people that flourish.
I love that. So much in there. I really like that simple, like, I guess, cornerstones of like attract, train, retain. I really like that. It's super simple. Yeah. So basically, as I was just saying to you before, obviously you've been in the recruitment industry for some time now, and typically we would go into, when you started your own business, these types of things. But I really want to try and maximize this time for people listening and really go into this journey that you experienced, come by 2013, that a lot of aspiring recruitment entrepreneurs visualize, maybe even think about, or maybe even be the reason why they start their own recruitment business, because they think one day they'll be able to exit that business. So I guess where I want to start is just going straight to that point of, like, by 2013, you'd exited a number of brands that you was involved with, started or co-founded.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people in the industry may never even achieve or experience one exit, but you experienced multiple. So let's just start there. How the hell did you achieve that? Like, how was you able to achieve that?
Different businesses, different results, really. I think with the initial brand that we founded, Carrington Fox, that was a very good market in the sort of first 5 years that we were building the business. And it was pre LinkedIn, where you could leverage other people's data. So you really had to build your own. And the data that we amassed by staying in very tight talent pools became very valuable very quickly. And the average fee of the market that we were in rose as the business was growing. So we had a sort of perfect storm of first mover advantage and a really exciting market for 5 years, which enabled us to get to a level of scale in the business, relationships with clients, repeatable processes, L&D, finance, etc. So we had a very difficult time in 2009 to 2012, but we had a good enough infrastructure and good enough legacy relationships with clients, people, that we were able to ride that and get out of the other side as the market came back. So I think we did a lot of our learning during that period. We got a lot of things wrong. I think we probably had an attitude of like, it's our baby, don't call it ugly. And so because of that, it was very Me Too business, where it's like everyone kind of sort of came in, same graduate program, same L&D, Henry's just done 500 grand a month, you can do it too, just do what he does. And I think that got us to a certain point, but I think because we were very young, felt we'd the Midas touch, we probably weren't in listening mode, we were in talking mode for quite a long time. And it's probably only looking back that we've realized there's probably quite a lot of missed opportunities there. But irrespective, sold the brand in 2012, and we had some other brands around that it made sense to exit at that point in time, because they probably work best as an investor together. So that was definitely and honestly probably as many learns from that as there was wins. With Lucas Love Healthcare, really different experience. So Carrington Fox was huge average fees, high end contingency, bit of retain, bit of search. Lucas Love Healthcare was private nursing agency, temp recruitment. And so there was common threads in that love your candidates, love your temps. But the operating model was poles apart. And Lucas Love Healthcare was probably a degree of right place, right time. Again, we had definitely had a very candidate short market. Probably didn't have the quality of competition there are in other geographies, and just a really exceptional management team. And I guess that was the kind of point of difference between Carrington Fox and Lucas Love Healthcare. Carrington Fox was, we built it; it was our DNA. Lucas Love Healthcare was the DNA of two founders that I knew well and backed, and so that was kind of quite a learn in terms of how do you manage that relationship to help them achieve what they want to get what they want to out of it. And that business actually in the end probably did a bit better in exit than a larger contingency retained business. And so it eventually sold to Better Care Capital. So like really different experiences,
Yeah,
one is
fair enough.
your own DNA, one is sort of trying to help people get the most out of theirs. But I think sort of by 2013, I sort of felt like I, built something myself and with Nick, and had a good result from it. Supported some other people to get the most out of their vision and had a good result from it. And the question was, actually, could I sort of blend that by getting involved and actually building an investment team that supports people? And it just felt like a pretty sensible move from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So it's a couple of things. So first thing just for context, so you mentioned the business that obviously acquired the healthcare brand. Was it the same company that bought the obviously that you sold to all the other
No,
brands?
no,
Was
the
it
healthcare brand
different
is
deals with
a
different
completely
people?
different transaction.
Oh really?
It sold a private equity business,
Okay.
and the other businesses exited effectively MBOs. So
Got it.
really, really different experience.
Okay, so it's MBOs. Okay, cool. Because that was definitely one of my questions. So, okay, a couple of things that I think would just be interesting at this point, and maybe you could say obviously share how you did it then, but also maybe share how things have happened more recently. But how did you go about finding these potential opportunities to get acquired, or like did you speak to someone that then brokered like your business out to the market to people that could be interested? Did you have relationships with people that were at PE firms or these types of firms that you could potentially sell to? Like how did you go about actually even getting that opportunity? Like how proactive were you?
It differs by brand. I think it's about sort of understanding what are you trying to achieve. So, most recruitment transactions are a glorified MBO, so it can either be
Okay.
the founder driving, trying to help the management team that, they've seeded and building succession plans around them, try and access capital for them to move the business forward, but the founder de-risks their position and leaves. But effectively, that's managing an MBO. It can be led by the management team who are approaching the owners of the business and saying, look, been a great journey to this point. Would you consider giving us the opportunity to buy you out, leverage up our position, and build the business in line with our DNA, our ambitions? So, and then you get sort of like something like Lucas Love Healthcare, which is quite unusual, where you get a management team that manage to attract a buyer where they just get out really quickly and move on and sit in the sun for a bit. So that was quite an unusual transaction in that regard, and definitely. That was a bit of a beauty parade of speaking to potential private equity investors who felt that they could run the vehicle effectively.
Yeah.
So that was an unusual process in that regard in terms of speed of exit. Where it's an MBO, it's kind of understanding like how do people's visions here align, who wants to drive the process, how do you do it symbiotically. Quite often if it's an investor, they'll probably want to drive that. They want to go out and say, okay, we're going to talk to other people in the private equity community and talk about, how we can move our position out whilst giving the management team a better opportunity to move forward with the mixture of equity and more debt in the business to be able to grow more quickly. If it's founder-led, then they're probably approaching it's management team-led, they're approaching the investor and saying that we would like that opportunity, and then it's actually can everyone agree something that they think is workable with. So, but ultimately, most recruitment transactions are a sort of a ribbon MBO in some way.
Yeah, because that was just going to be my sort of next question really as we go into this. Like, in your experience in the last, I don't know, 5 or so years, how realistic is it for a recruitment business to achieve that exit? Is it actually a lot more common that you see now, that it's actually like you just said that sort of glorified MBO? And I definitely have more questions on that. But like from your lens, like in the last, because obviously I feel like the more and more I speak to people like yourself and other people on this podcast, I think maybe, I don't know, in the last maybe 10 years ago, you might have been like, right, I'm starting a recruitment business because I want to start with it and I'm going to exit it, right? But then how many people actually achieve that? But like, how much of that is actually going on in terms of it being sold to a PE firm or whatever? Is it typically more the MBO side that you typically see more often?
Okay, so I guess if the question is how do you is it very easy to get an exit? The answer is it's really easy to get an exit. Depends what you want for it. If basically pass the business to your number two for a quid, got an exit. So I think the question is, if you're trying to sell a business to a private equity firm, is that easy? No, it's not.
Yeah.
And if it was, everyone would be doing it. It doesn't happen that often.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
And so and it's really important to understand like what is, if you're thinking about my aim is to build a business that could sell to private equity. Well,
Okay.
I think you need to push forward and say, well, actually, is that true? Is that what I really want? Because if it's what I really want, I'm probably going to have to build a business that would be very different. The touch, feel, look of it, process of it, very different. I was just building it to, be proud of the business that I own, have a nice life, make some money, have the car, the house, whatever I want.
Yeah.
So, and everything that you do as early as possible needs to be driven towards presenting your business in best possible light. And so, understanding, the investor mentality is pretty important in that. So, if you sort of step back and maybe look from an investor's lens, I am running a private equity business, and first up, it's I've raised a lot of money. It's not really my own money. I need to demonstrate that I can invest that money well. Part of giving people confidence to invest in a private equity firm is saying, look, there's certain parameters that we will and won't invest in. And so, one of that tends to be like, there's a certain level of EBITDA that beneath that we don't touch, because that, investors, the people that are giving them capital probably feel like that's a risk profile we don't really like.
Yeah.
So it's really important to understand, like, if you're looking at speaking to private equity, what are the parameters that they're looking for? What are the parameters they've raised capital from? Because if you don't fit into that, there's no point really in having a conversation yet, So in terms of trying to get an exit in the short term. So, and if you think about, an investor, like really simply put, if I'm buying a bit of art, I kind of want to put that on my wall, look at it, get a couple of mates around and say, oh, do you like that? And then sort of in 5 or 10 years time, sell it at a profit without having to do much. If I'm buying a classic car, pretty similar, drive occasionally, turn up, goes up in value, sell it. I don't really want to have to be the mechanic. I don't really want to have to rebuild it every 6 months. And, so if you're asking for premium price from private equity firm, you need to demonstrate to them that this is a business that will continue to grow in your absence.
Yeah,
this is an asset.
The main thing.
It's an asset that's going to rise in value. Now, no private equity firm thinks they're that lucky. They know that they're going to have to work hard with management to get best possible result. But they want to believe that what they're buying is, what they think they're buying, which is a business that's going to continue to grow at some pace without their input. And so, you need to be able to demonstrate that the business you're in hasn't capped out of market. There's other market opportunities that you can continue to attract, train, and retain staff post transaction too. You need to demonstrate that you've invested in the business enough in the last couple of years for it to continue to grow. And actually, what you haven't been doing in the last couple of years is not investing in the business to make it look as profitable. Growth in it for the next person. So I think market really, really matters. What value proposition your business has? It's kind of back to, I'll give you a very good example. Actually, there's, I spoke to a private equity investor in the US who called me up maybe 5 years ago after a well-known transaction, which was, the Frank Group transaction. And
which was the what? Sorry,
the Frank Group transaction.
Oh, Frank Group. Yeah. Okay.
And when we were sort of having a chat about sort of why buy Newcastle based, you invested in Spotify, Airbnb, different things. What were the things that came to those? Actually, saw huge value in the talent pools. So actually the candidate pools that the business had built, was actually seen as actually that network, that ability to network into that qualified talent pool, the size and scale of the talent pool. We just see tremendous value in that, because we're really long on Microsoft, we're really long in Salesforce. Yeah. And so that ability to build a talent pool, which is probably bigger than anyone else's in the space, the investor saw a huge amount of value in that, took a huge amount of comfort and safety in that. And so, it's about understanding what an investor wants to see, why they think your business has a USP, why they think it's going to continue to grow. And one of the, challenges that has, and one of the things I think it's important for recruitment founders or entrepreneurs to understand is that, the last 20 years has, some really impressive successes of private equity investing in a recruitment business and continuing to grow and develop and make money, and Frank Group's a really good example. Living Bridge had invested, and before that did incredibly well from helping the founders build a business and moving forward. That's just an example of really good private equity transaction. But there's also, so many private equity firms have examples of, investments they've made in recruitment firms which haven't panned out.
Yeah.
And it's not an asset heavy business. Your assets are your people, and they, arrive at 9, leave 5 every day. It's not like you own a fleet of cars that, or a tech stack that you could, a proprietary tech that you could sell to someone else. So, investors need to have a lot of confidence that the management team, that if there's people leaving the business as part of the transaction, that's not going to derail the business from a culture perspective.
Yeah.
They need a lot of confidence that the management team that is staying at the other side of a transaction have the ability and capability to continue to grow the business.
Yeah.
And, I think fundamentally giving investors that confidence and assurity is really important. And then market.
Yeah.
You need to demonstrate the market still behind you.
Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna. One of the questions I have for you is, like, in your opinion, what makes a smart market, right? We'll go into that, but just to, I guess, because this is one of my questions that I prepared for, just to, I guess, just like sort of tie this all up, because we've spoken a lot around the PE path, right? And one of my questions was around the I guess, like what you were saying, like really understanding the key parameters that PE investors want to see from your recruitment business, right? So that was one of the questions that I know I've had recruitment leaders ask me before. Like, if I'm speaking to people like you, what are the key KPIs that I need to really have a grasp of that Ryan, the investor, is going to want to see and know? So let's say that we've got the management team, that people part, we've got that, right? And I do feel like that is why the whole like MBO thing is more common, because I've spoke to so many recruitment leaders who are on that path to wanting to exit, and they lose their purpose because they're like, I want to do deals. I miss that, right? So I understand that people part, why it's so important. So if I have got that nailed, I'm confident in my management team. I've got my exit plan. I feel like it's not going to be reliant on me. What are the like key KPIs, metrics, parameters that I need to really demonstrate and showcase to show that we've got great assets and it's a strong case to be invested in?
I guess two things in that. Firstly, I'd sort of, if you genuinely are talking to people, it's like along the way, I feel a bit lost because I'm starting to lose that, deal junkie mentality.
Yeah.
You just need to reframe that and make that, the deals you do is about attracting the best people to come and join your business. That's your role.
Yeah, fair, nice.
That's the sales journey, or about going out to back other people or acquire other businesses. That's your job now. It's just changed. It's not clients and candidates. I think in terms of, what are the key metrics that somebody, should be mindful of, or what should they be trying to present? It does depend a little bit on market. Search is going to be very different to logistics temp business, but broadly, you need to be able to demonstrate trend. So what is my trend on sales? What's my trend in net fee income? And what's my trend in EBITDA? How's that conversion looking and changing along the way? And am I continuing to invest to achieve that? What's my productivity per head? How's that tracking? What's my headcount? How's that tracking? How can I demonstrate that's repeatable and we're going to maintain or grow that productivity per head? What's my margins? Are my margins defensible? Are they growing as we get better? Or actually, in order to maintain growth, are we having to accept lower margins along the way to get more sort of wholesale business? Investors don't like margins going down because they feel like they're just going to have to keep working harder a little bit every year to get the business to stand still. So, margins matter. Debt for profile of the business is important. I think people do understand that too. If you're all private equity investors will want to get someone else in beside them to help finance the deal. And, if your business has a very poor balance sheet, is strewn with debt, that is going to come off your enterprise value to what you actually get. So, businesses will look at that. How much more debt can the business hold against its EBITDA? It's important. Debtor days matter. Declines pay, important. The business will also want to see that, or private equity investor will also want to see that there is, I think one of the big things a lot of private equity firms look at, speed to competency. So,
speed to what? Sorry, competency.
Competency. So, and one of the things I look at, I see a lot asked is, people are you know, say you've got 50 fee earners, and quite often when you actually look at a 50 fee earner or 100 fee earner business, so say our average productivity is average £12,000, impressive £20,000, whatever it may be, and that's factually correct. There's 100 people, the average is 20, but actually if you look at the median, it's actually 14, because there's kind of 10 guys producing 50% of the revenue.
Right.
And the investor won't want to see that. What they actually really want to understand is what does the average person, not what's the average, so what's not the average number someone achieves, is actually what does the average person in this business achieve. And so, that's really important, because an investor will look at that and think there's a lot of key man risk in that. And you can't demonstrate to me that you can get sort of 50, 60, 70% of your people to a certain level. You can only actually demonstrate that you can get 20%.
Get 20%. Yeah, that's
interesting.
interesting.
I think that's really important to be mindful of that, because it'll come up, So I think they're the key things that an investor will want to see, like what's the trend lines and those things.
Yeah. And then just quickly, real practical here, from your experience, what should be recruitment business owners be like? What's like the, I guess, first major milestone with their EBITDA for them to even be like, okay, maybe we need to actually, like, if their goal is to achieve some sort of exit, right, or transaction, like at what point do you think EBITDA wise can they then actually really start thinking about, maybe we should actually start having conversation? I don't know, what's like what I know you said earlier, like if it's below a certain thing, it probably won't even be looked at. So I'm just curious as to like what you typically see that EBITDA being at. I know there's so many other factors because you just shared, but I guess typically that you've seen.
I can answer that specific to private equity, because along the way, if you're thinking about sort of raising money or some kind of transaction, like at any point you can go to a bank, raise some money, and at any point you can get maybe an angel investor or someone will put some money in along the way because they believe in you and your product and your vision. So I think it's very, the reality is that from your first idea, that I'm going to perhaps go and set up my own brand to £100,000 of profit to 300 to 400. At all points you have options of either taking debt into the business or debt equity mix, whatever it may be. So I don't think that there is a hard and fast rule that someone needs to get to a certain level before they consider should this just be the me show. But I think if you're thinking about a private equity transaction, it kind of goes back to what have they raised capital on. And 1 million EBIT is a pretty sort of well-known floor, kind of low market private equity. So 1 to 3 million EBIT, sort of low market, mid market from there, and then sort of you get sort of like the huge there, Carlisle and stuff in this world that would touch anything probably less than 10. So so you kind of need to know your audience, and part of the reason that private equity firms just aren't really there and stuff that's less than 1 million EBITDA is that really twofold. It probably feels like there's still a bit of key man risk at that point. If you apply a bit of sensitivity to sales, that would probably fall down quite quickly. But I think the second reason is that they find it hard to bank it. They find it hard to get, an HSBC or another high street bank to come in beside them and put that
to fund it,
less than that level. So, it's sort of understanding that, the question is, if you can get to 1 million yourself, maybe you can get to 2 or 3 before you need to go and have that conversation, because it's only going to get easier again. The higher level of EBITDA you have, believe it or not, the more investors there are in the market. And so at a higher multiple where you get a better result. So, but really private equity sort of 1 million is probably the mark, isn't it?
Yeah, fair enough. And what has been the typical multiple that people have been able to achieve in your career, like what that you've seen so far? Is it really varied? Okay, fair enough. I guess just trying to get, because I feel like there'll be so much, I don't know, just like chat in the pub and like he's got this much blah blah blah. So like I think people are interested in like what do people achieve? What multiple can they achieve?
It is very varied. It's varied by geography. It's varied by sector. It's varied by scale of business. And actually it's varied by just timing. If you at the right point in the cycle, and there's 3 or 4 private equity businesses interested in the staffing sector, and probably get a slightly better multiple than you're right at the top of the market, and they're thinking you're probably apply a discount to this. There's no one else at it. So, I think timing, timing and scale are probably the 2 things which impact multiple the most. In terms of what's realistic, I think if you're looking to get any kind of exit multiple, really it grows quite quickly from maybe 3 to 4 million EBITDA. So that that kind of age old, we need to be 70% contract, 30% perm to get, the right mix of multiple. I'm not sure that's as real as it once was. I think people are investors probably look at quality of earnings a little bit more, a little bit more sort of ruthlessly than they do the mix of earnings these days. But once you get to 3 or 4 million EBITDA, I mean, you really shouldn't be doing anything at less than sort of 6 to 8 times. Once you get to 10 million EBITDA, you definitely shouldn't be doing anything less than 10.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. So final point on this, because you've mentioned quite a few things from headcount, EBITDA, NFI, time to competency. I guess the question that I just had, like, if you were to, like, the question is basically from an investor's point of view, like, what would you, if I'm listening to this right now, like, what would end up being, from your point of view, like the most valuable part of the business out of interest? Like, if we were to zoom in on like maybe one particular area that could impact other things in the recruitment business, what would you say is the most valuable part of the bit of a recruitment business, would you say, if we were to really get it right?
I mean, by person or function?
I don't know. You say, I don't know, whatever comes up for you.
Leadership,
Leadership,
starts and ends that, and
fair enough.
When we're looking marketing leadership, when we're looking at making investment, it's about really getting to know the management team and being, really open about our relationships, our interests, or wants and desires aligned here. And fundamentally, you're backing the leader, ideally, to be able to execute on what he says his vision is and trying to help him do that. So, as an investor, leader is huge. I mean, absolutely huge. And the leader is the point of the spear. And so, you've got to believe that the leader has it in their locker to continue to grow and develop and thrive. And as the business grows, but you also need to be able to believe that they've got a survival mentality too if things get tough, So, and they're two very different things, last year, difficult year for a lot of people, right? And really, really interesting. The people that survived in that market and managed to keep the team together, get through, aren't necessarily the same people that would really thrive in the best market. So ideally, you're looking for somebody that can go from survive to thrive, but if they need to, can survive and don't have a wishbone where their backbone should be. So leadership, huge. And then I think after that, in terms of function. We've got a DD tool called Artius that we use when we're looking. It's called a scores business out of 360 points, and we're really trying to say where's the areas of improvement. If we invested, where can we help? And I think the sort of functions that we would probably be most interested in and place a lot of value in, probably marketing and L&D.
Marketing and L&D,
I mean, I think as an investor, a finance function is something that provided it's fit for purpose, you can add value to. Governance, HR, provided they're fit for purpose, you can add value to. Talent attraction, L&D, and marketing. I mean, I think that they're really, really aligned to the DNA of the business. So what you really look at is like, how are those? I mean, are they good? Are they getting a lot of value from marketing? Are they positioning the business well? What revenue do they generate from marketing, client to accounts? Right? Is that repeatable? What's the talent attraction process like? What's the retention like? How do they onboard? How do they induct? Is that people? And then L&D, like what is, if you strip away the kind of management and the people we're talking to every day, who's coming through and how's the business helping them come through? Do they have a good track record of doing that? And so I think like by function, talent attraction, L&D, and marketing would be something that we would be really encouraged if we saw those operating well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So really, okay. So I guess this would be a nice segue then into, like you said, like how important you said leadership first, right? So I guess let's sort of take this into the direction of maybe a bit more down the sort of MBO route, and a few other questions that I have for you. But this question comes up a lot, right? Because I do feel like a lot of growing recruitment leaders and agencies like do really find it hard to have that layer underneath them, or like obviously cultivate those leaders within the business. So I guess my first question is like, in the typical businesses that you sort of see do this well, or a business that you think is in a really strong position, like what does the typical like org chart look like from a leadership perspective out of interest? Like how is it, I don't know, how do recruitment businesses typically have their sort of management layer within the business, and how does it typically operate, just out of interest? Like what are the typical org charts that you see?
I just completely changes by,
Oh, is it? Fair enough.
by scale. I'd expect it to look very different at 300 people than 30, in
Yeah, of
terms of
course.
what the CEO job is. I think like the big thing for me is actually like, sort of going back to leadership fits into, well, who you're going to have report into when.
Yeah.
That's kind of about a leader understanding what his job is. And that should change as the business grows. So, I think most people can relate to when they set up a business, your job is literally everything, and sort of all of the above. And, you're sort of struggling to find the time to speak to clients and candidates because you're sending out an invoice and you're interviewing someone to come join the business, and then you're drawing up this contract, and then you're talking about your great L&D program while you write the first module the day before you give it at 2 in the morning and all that stuff. So, and as time changes, CEO needs to go, well, actually, how do I, in the next 12 months, as I'm writing my business plan for that year, how do I impact this business best? And what do I need to let go? And who do I need to bring in?
What do I need to let go? Yeah.
And I think, one of the things which really slows a business growth is, if you kind of think about the mentality of a recruiter, it's, good recruiters are quite controlling by nature.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have to be, I've got a candidate here, I've got clients here, my job's to influence that process, get them to successfully date. And so, I'm trying to manage that process, control that process to get a positive outcome. I'm God, I can do it, I can make every deal happen. I'm the best influencer, etc. And so, your mentality as you come up through recruitment is very control, don't leave anything to chance, look around corners. And actually, as you start to build a business, that slows the business down. If you try and be God and you're trying to come up with a solution for everything, you're not trusting people, you're not bringing the best people in, listening to them, then actually it becomes very, very difficult to run a business because you end up in that place of there's too much to control. And you actually end up doing everything averagely, stepping in everyone's toes and not doing anything well, because actually you're not prepared to let go and bring in people who know more than you about a function, who can do it better, and actually learn how to have a good relationship and manage that person by listening. And, I think that slows down a lot of recruitment businesses where they never get to that big org chart because actually the founder couldn't let anything go. They feel uncomfortable letting anything go. And, part of that is mentality, but part of that is also, it's comfort. And because if I'm a recruiter, I've done that job. So actually, I find it quite easy, to bring someone else to do it or manage someone else to do it because I can relate. I've done it. I think recruiters quite often when they're building a business, they really struggle to let go because they actually struggle to manage other functions because they've never really done it themselves, or certainly haven't done it to the level or
really interesting
experience of the person they're bringing into it. And so, I think that kind of letting go and trusting, attracting the best people, and then creating a framework where they can influence the business to enable you to move forward and focus on where you can impact the business best. And, could get you to a point where you've got a really great org chart, which is effectively, I've got my, key directors, whether it's by geography or division, that, reporting to me and sales and how they're doing. I've got my head of marketing here, which is reporting on how he's working or she's working with key stakeholders to drive value. I've got HR and L&D who are talking about, actually where's the performance improvement opportunities? What do we need to get better? I've got talent attraction, which is making sure that we can repeat this process and come into it. And, those people that you should be, have around you in an org chart, probably quite close to you. I think as a business grows, then there's a probably strategy point, isn't there? A lot of businesses will look to either have somebody focus on strategy or bring in a sort of chief strategy officer, which helps you sort of tie together all of those to achieve your goals.
Sure.
I think they're sort of like, if I was looking at an org chart, that's kind of broadly what you do.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. So I feel like you just sort of answered this, but I want to ask it because, as I'm sure you're well aware, a huge portion of the UK recruitment industry is very much made up of micro, small businesses, right? Yeah. Under 10 heads, 20 heads or whatever. Now, I'd like to think, even though that's a high percentage, from the conversations that I have, I don't know if you'd agree, I would think that quite also, let's say it's 80% of the UK recruitment market, I'd probably like to say at least half or maybe even 3/4 of those recruitment leaders actually want it to be bigger than it is, right? Or have motivations to do that. Not everyone wants a 20, 30, 40 person business, but I do feel like they have aspirations, they have big goals, but because of various things, one of them being what you just shared, they may never actually get there. So a real common question I always get in my inbox for me to ask the people that have breaking through those sort of really difficult barriers of like getting over 30 heads, getting over 20 heads or 40 heads. So that was the question really. And I feel like you may have answered it a bit, but I guess the question is for any founders listening to this who are at that 20 person stage that do have aspirations, they've got a vision that they want it to be bigger. Like what other advice would you give them to break through that milestone, that barrier that is maybe, things that may be preventing them from getting past it out of interest? Is there anything else on that?
Yeah, sure. Churn kills you. When you're a small business, absolutely throttles you.
Obviously, churn for your own business, like as
so
talent.
If you're quite a small team, so you see a lot of businesses where they start off with 1 or 2 people, go to 5 or 6, back to 3, up to 7, 5, up to 9, back to 2, back to 6, and but my question would be like, what part do you have to play in that? Like, what are you learning from that? Because if it keeps happening, I suspect the common thread you. And so, and really, why is it happening? Because the founder isn't being disciplined enough on their, basically, what's my vision of business and how do I stay disciplined to that? So, if you are, I think when you're very opportunistic in nature, this is really hard to execute on, easy advice to give, but when you're opportunistic in nature, when you've got early stage recruitment business, we do software developers, but someone's just thrown up a project manager role. Well,
it's like, we'll do that.
Like, all that's doing is taking you further away from your purpose. Like, that's not repeatable. The work you're doing this week isn't going to add value to next week. So really try and make sure that every single person who touches your business, the work they're doing this week, you can extract value off in the future. And, for me, that's about really staying tight in the market, tight in the talent pool, where, the value that becomes value accretive and people that join the business at whatever point have a better chance of success in the future. So that's really huge for me. Like, don't be too opportunistic in who you're hiring. I know we're sort of doing software developers, but Jeff's a great accountancy and finance recruiter. And I've worked with him before, and I really trust him. Unless you're going to bring him in to do software development recruitment, don't fucking hire him. That's set up 2 businesses doing that. Don't make it too hard. And so, try and stay ruthlessly focused in setting up one business, one specialism, one thing that you can become, have a USP at, create value in, be best, own it. The second you try and go too wide, too early, you're not actually. Of course, people want to, as they grow, build out. But actually, that's a repeatable process. We've done it in one market. We're going to do it in another. You have nothing repeating if you're trying to do 2 or 3 markets at the start. And it very rarely works. And, more often than not, you see it sort of distilled to one market several years later. So, that'd be really strong advice to that. The other thing is that don't hire in hope. And, I see this, like, UK recruitment businesses specifically are not great at this. They tend to see headcount and success is inextricably linked. So if we can get another 5 people in, then we'd be 15, not 10. But actually, that distracts the 10 people you have from going from good to great. That's a really poor decision. Like, try and get to great and then grow. Try and hire into desks that are warm, where basically you're missing out on leads, missing out on opportunities if you don't hire. Don't have, lukewarm desks and think, well, if I hire this hero, he'll make it really warm. Because if you can't get the people you have performing, diluting your time, your energy is only going to dilute performance. And so I think people try and grow too quickly. And it's back to that kind of, what's the average performance? What's the kind of median performance? Quite often, someone will be at 6, 8, or 8 heads, and they look at it and go, oh, brilliant, we're doing 80 grand a month. That's all right. We made 25 grand last month. And, so probably we could hire another 3 or 4 people in the back of that. But actually, the kind of 10 heads they have, only 3 of them are consistently performing. So whilst you are making money, and whilst it kind of looks good in that little spreadsheet that you've done, the truth is most of your business aren't performing. So get them performing, then grow, make it repeatable. Am I repeating what I did before to grow? And, that is like really, like, I can't give that counsel strongly enough. Stay tight. And, and also, like, and this is pretty ruthless thing to say, but people hire too lazily. Like, it is hard to hire people, get good at it. So don't hire B's hoping they'll become an A. Say like I'm an A, A's hiring, are C's. I'm going to hold out and interview hard till I find somebody fucking great. And because I've really had to earn that hire, I'm going to really value that hire. I'm going to work with them so hard to get them working. And so like really high bar in talent attraction. You need to be clear on who you're looking for, and then you can't sort of settle for someone different or change your mind on that because just find it a bit easier.
That's a really good point.
Really, really strong on that. And then, once people are in the business, you need to be honest with them. Like, actually, this is my expectation, at this point in time in our journey. As we perform, my expectation is going to change, go up, but I do need you to do this. And if people don't, you've got to in and out quickly because it devalues your business to everyone else. If you're sitting with like 3 people who are really, really performing, but 7 people are still sitting there aren't, like, what does that say? And you need to be able to make strong decisions to make sure that you're trying to create a core where everyone's exceptional. And if you look at, businesses that I think, the obvious businesses that have been involved in, any kind of, transaction or event in the last number of years, when it's Frank Group, Fade, and Spencer Ogden, whatever, the core is exceptional.
Yeah, cool. So I think this is a good question to ask. So I want to make sure we ask around because I feel like this is something that even when me and you started speaking, you like really spoke a lot about this around the sort of smart markets piece. So I want to make sure we speak about that because I know that's big for you guys at Tempting Ventures. So just before I do that, I think it's a perfect time to ask, like, what I hear a lot of recruitment leaders struggle with is, yes, everything that you're saying, and then understanding what their hiring triggers are. I feel like you're talking a bit about it there, where you get your core people who are missing leads, they're missing out on opportunities, and then try and get in rather than, as you said, I really like that. Instead of thinking, oh, if we got someone in, then they would probably do better, or it'd be go from lukewarm to warm. I really like that. So I don't know, is there science behind hiring trigger? Because I feel like a lot of people struggle with that. Like you just said.
I think there's a few things. So I think try and so don't do it by your overall business. So if you are at 15 people and you've got sort of 2 teams, don't, because you're at sort of 15 grand per head, don't just think we're hiring everywhere. If one team's at 20 and one team's at 10, hire into the one that's 20. Don't try and get the one 10 to 20. That's, it's like follow what's working. And you'd be really surprised that actually a lot of people don't follow advice because they want to win everywhere. And it's just far quicker to follow what wins and try and get it to critical mass. So, I think that's important to separate out so you can look at it. I think, it's when your business is relatively small, average productivity can be a real red herring. You do really want to look at it. If I stripped out the top 2 or 3 people, where everyone else? What's the average there?
Yeah.
If that's, at a level which is exciting, you should probably be hiring. But if it's not, it's only the top 2 or 3 that make it look exciting. I try and get the rest up, like the tail up. That's pretty important. And then actually the other thing is, speed to competency. So, that's something I really try and track early in a business because it should get better. And if it's not getting better, I would be concerned if that's trending the wrong way. So, if when you were 5 people and you're all working really tightly together, you hired a junior or an experienced hire, and within 3 weeks they had interviews, within 6 weeks they made the first placement. That was pretty consistent, but that's not 3 months. And I'd be starting to look at that and go, should we be hiring, or do we have something that we need to address here? Because speed to companies is slowing down before we hire, because we're not giving the best chance of success when they arrive. So I think they're the things that I would be.
I love that.
Looking at.
I love the speed to competency. I really like that. So, right, final question, and then let's sort of finish this up with just really focusing on, Tempting Ventures, smart people, smart markets, because I'm really curious about this. So the final point on this, because I do get this a lot, and various reasons why I think people struggle with this is, one, don't know how to find people, that haven't had the best experiences with people. But the question is that I get a lot of the time, which I want your thoughts on, is like all of these things that we spoke about in the last 45 minutes obviously could potentially be easier, or you would make less mistakes if you were working with someone or had some sort of mentor, NED, to help you ride this journey, right? And I've seen you talk about that. I think one of your videos of Recruitment Entrepreneur, whereas you're like, look, if I had access or help, I probably would have achieved an even better multiple or got there quicker, right? Yeah. So I know a lot of people want like that sort of help. As I said, a few different reasons why they don't end up, but like, I don't know, how can people listen to this, find credible NEDs and mentors, like how to approach them, how to find them? What's your advice on that?
It's just so situational. I've got a lot of thoughts on it. So, I guess the irony of, particularly early stage investors is, they're probably looking to invest in someone that doesn't really need investment to do well. It's with investment could they do exceptionally.
Yeah.
Quite often the very best people don't really believe they need the investment or the help because, everything they've done has worked so far.
Yeah.
So, actually getting, best people, best investors together early stage, the likelihood of that happening is probably quite slim, and so, investors need to they need to be conscious of that and, work hard to make sure that, visions are aligned. And I think, recruitment entrepreneurs need to really understand what taking investment means, because you've got I can take investment or I can take some advice, or I could be in a network, and you've got lots of different options as to how to get counsel to grow your business. So, you need to be very, very clear on what you're looking for,
Okay.
And why. And
That's
you
a good
also
point.
need to be clear, is it realistic? Because investors want to work with management teams that are going to be, ruthlessly focused and trying to, achieve their potential of building a business that is best in class at what it does. And so, that honesty in relationship really matters. I think there are, if you look around the market, there's probably quite a negative, connotation about the idea of recruitment investment. And because you tend to sort of hear, like in anything, where it hasn't worked out, it's quite a loud voice.
So, same with the NEDs as well. I always hear it, like they just don't really do much, not very proactive, just sit on our board meeting every charge 500, 700 quid a month.
Yeah, but my question would be, what's your part to play in that, and what part do you have in that? Because if you're not driving value from an NED, and if you're not listening to the advice, or you're not making a decision early and saying you're not for me, war stories getting a bit boring, I've learned 80% of what I'm going to in the first 20% of the time, and you let that go for another year or 2 years and start moaning about the NED. I mean, I actually
that's
it's moral, and so you got to be selective. And I think one of the things I think is a common thread is that I think, investees don't do enough DD and investors. And quite often recruitment business founders don't do enough work to find the right NED and to do DD on the NED.
Due diligence, yeah?
Yeah, you mean. Exactly. Yeah. And, and it's kind of very similar to hiring great people to come work for you. And you've got to work really hard to find the right people to come and join your business. You have to work really hard to find the right NED. You've got to kiss a few frogs. And it's exactly the same with an investor. It's got to be the right mix. It's got to be the right mix of fuel to get it to ignite. So, investment for investment's sake is a waste of time. It's about actual honesty of actually, what are your goals? Can we help you do them? Do we understand what each other's roles are going to be in that? Are we happy to write that down? And then are we happy to be beholden to it? And, we both have to work hard to deliver on it. If that conversation isn't happening, probably shouldn't be taking investment. And I think it's and I think founders need to understand they do have a part to play quite often where an investment falls over or it doesn't work out with an NED. They were in the room too. And so, I'd really counsel founders, whether it's an NED, whether it's an investor, don't phone up all the people that are in their existing portfolio. Don't phone up the people that they're working with at the moment. Phone up the people they used to work with. Phone up the investments that didn't work, phone up the NED that you did 2 years ago, and say, look, what were the positives, what were the negatives, what advice would you give me? And because and an investor or an NED should want that really, the relationships they have in the background, with perhaps businesses that haven't scaled with them, where there's been a parting of ways. If that relationship still isn't a good one, and there isn't positive to say, you'd probably take.
Something to be said there,
So I think but I think that it completely depends what point you're at. I don't think broadly, you should look to take an NED too early in your business. I think it's got to be your DNA at the start. It's pretty obvious the things I think you need to do to get a business to 10, stay focused, hire great people, focus on LD, get your productivity there, stay in market, look at market. think after that, it is a different journey to get to 10, 30. And I think I probably would be starting to look at maybe as kind of get advice to someone who's done that reasonably recently, or has worked with a business that's done that reasonably recently, because, there's kind of war stories from somebody who did it 25 years ago. I'm just not sure.
Things change. Yeah, exactly.
They are anymore,
Even just in the last 18 months, 24 months.
Really, got to really understand tech stack, really understand marketing, got to really understand, because if you think about sort of recruitment broadly, 40 years ago I'm setting up a, recruitment business in Reading, and anyone a 3-mile radius, I'll find your job, Now it's, like, so sort of Ryan Adams to signify, I'm only going to look at Scala developers, but I'm going to do it globally, anywhere. We can do it anywhere because the technology enables us to do that. Like how recruitment business operates and models, and how people, remote working and how they fit together and work together, and what methodologies you have to do that. Like that's really the pond you're playing in now, not 500 people in one office, basically we'll do a bit of anything 30, 40 years ago. So I think like that kind of currency of doing it recently matters for either an NED or investor.
Yeah, love that. Just before I ask you the final question, we'll end on the Tempting Ventures piece. Just a quick fire question, really, because I feel like in your journey you would have seen a lot of different tools and tech that you'd invested in. Like, in your opinion, what are like the tools or tech that come to mind that like you would, as a recruitment business owner, you would not want to be living without, out of interest, like that come to mind, just really quickly?
Yeah, I think we do a really good CRM matters. I mean, we use Vincere across our businesses, and I'm impressed with the product. I think it's continuing to evolve, so I give it a thumbs up. I think you do need to make sure that Vincere about to do something with one sales, which is going to enable
one up sales.
Yeah, to get a better quality of management data for the consultants too.
Nice.
I think that's probably something I encourage. I think there's a great product. I think it's called Conquest, which enables actual people to be able to look at their forward earnings and like kind of manage that and see it and understand
nice.
what tools could be. Like, I think that's really empowering. So I think that's important. LinkedIn's a pretty obvious one, but I think the question using LinkedIn is, how do I get into LinkedIn? Get the information off it and then live in my data. And so I think LinkedIn's kind of it is a necessity. But I think if your business is always on LinkedIn all day and at the expense of its own CRM, all you're really doing is mining the same database as X amount of recruiters out there. So it's about trying to get it off that with better quality of data that's on LinkedIn under your CRM, where you understand people's wants, needs, ambitious, dreams.
Yeah, loads of different tools that can do that, isn't there? Like Lusher, LeadRQ, loads of different things.
Exactly. And we personally won't put anything in our CRM unless we've spoken to the candidate at length, and have personal details. If that hasn't happened and there aren't significant notes, keep working harder to have that conversation. What you really want is your CRM to be your Everest with really great data and better quality CRM than anyone else. One thing I would say, depending on which market you're in, I think Talent Insights is a really valuable tool if you're in sort of search space.
I've heard that'd be really valuable with retained search projects.
Yeah, really, really, really good tool. But you get out of it what you put into it, And so, but we've definitely seen a lot of wins from making sure that we work that data well, and so I think there's some of the key things. Then obviously,
nice
tools to be able to market back out of your CRM effectively and automate that.
Love that. So look, let's end it here then. Tempting Ventures, where are you going? You're as I love the statement on your website. We back smart people in smart markets.
Yeah,
to build world-beating recruitment brands. Where are we taking Tempting Ventures?
Yeah, well, I think we've got quite a few brands that are either in the UK and US, or operating in the US from the UK, and operating in Germany from the UK, where we think there's great opportunity to land and expand. So we expect to see that in the next year. Just in process of finalizing investment in the US and in scientific market, which we're really excited about, which we expect to grow quite quickly next year. We expect to got a brand we've invested in, a search brand called Eastward, which we think is going to grow pretty quickly in New York, and we think there's a great opportunity to actually acquire other brands in aligned spaces beside it. So we expect to make quite a few investments in the next 12 months. It's been a good ride recently, but our priority at this point, is to only invest in businesses that we really, really believe in, because actually we've got a great opportunity to invest time in the businesses that we've already invested in, and we're really excited about where they're going to go.
Yeah, I love that. And then look, final question is just obviously an industry that has obviously given you, obviously been a big part of your life, has obviously given you a lot. Like, what if you could change the industry, what would you improve?
That's a really hard question, right? I think, I guess, it's very easy to say, well, I wish it was a more honest industry. I don't really, because actually all the people that aren't very honest and sort of actually probably give me a bit of a USP. So sort of like, I kind of feel like, I should be telling you, I wish it was more transparent and more honest, but actually I think that's your opportunity, isn't it? Because it's not really like that. Yes, I think that's important. That I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the business. I think people need to take a much more collaborative approach and more open approach. And I think that is happening with different networks that, are in the market, which are they're certainly more collaborative and less combative than the market was historically. So I guess, that's one thing. And then the second thing is just actually confidence. I think a lot of recruitment businesses actually just don't have the confidence to value the great service that they offer. And, might seem, a bit harsh to say, but, if I'm Deloitte or PwC, I bring someone into my business, which is basically I phone a recruiter, meet them, and then, I happily will farm that person out to a client at a 300% margin because I've got the brand. It's not really doing much different. But recruiters sometimes, struggle to have the strength to say, actually, we add a huge amount of value and, we are confident in that. And we don't feel, in any way ashamed or guilty for the value that we add because, the market in the next few years, the place recruiters have in that market is only going to grow in importance. The market, most markets which are in any way technology facing are becoming more and more candidate short. And, in the absence of a relationship or relationships with great recruiters, any business will struggle to grow, thrive, survive. And so, we've got a really important part to play in the economy. And, we need to sort of think like fundamentally people build businesses and we're here to try and match the best people with the best businesses. And so like, we really do have a part to play and it's an important part. And I think, businesses need a little bit more confident in how they articulate that, but also how they charge for it. Because, I think the recruitment, the margin probably spent the last 10 years a little bit of margin erosion. That should bring back the other way now.
Yeah, I love that. Ryan, been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast and really enjoyed that. Thanks a lot.
Okay, man.